If you want to do well on your exam, you will need to become keenly aware of the ways in which the exam writers are trying to confuse you. Specifically, they will attempt to make bad answers look good and good answers look bad. One of the test writer's favorite tricks is to take a wrong answer and then populate that answer with buzzwords that are key words from the passage. So when you read the wrong answer, it sounds familiar, and therefore it feels good. On the flip side, they will often take the correct answer and they will rephrase it a bit, so as you read the correct answer, it doesn't sound familiar. In this question, for example, the question asks about the yeoman farmer. And one of the answer choices, answer choice A, describes the farmer as honest entrepreneurs. And somewhere in the fifth paragraph, there is a part where we have the word yeoman right next to the word entrepreneur. So as you read answer choice A, it feels very familiar. But if you read the entire fifth paragraph, you see the fifth paragraph is not talking about the yeoman farmer. It's talking about how the yeoman disappeared and how the cash crop converted the yeoman farmer into an entrepreneur. So even though answer choice A sounded very familiar, it was in fact the worst exact opposite answer. The correct answer in this case ends up being D, where the yeoman farmer is described as happy and industrious. But the word industrious doesn't appear anywhere in the passage. Instead, in the second paragraph, the farmer is described as uniquely productive, who had a small farm and worked it with his family. And so if you are productive and you work hard, then that by definition makes you industrious. But notice what the test writers did. They tried to make answer D look unfamiliar. So when you read the word industrious, you think, well, I don't recall reading that word in the passage. And that was their attempt to try and make D look like the wrong answer. And on the flip side, when you read answer choice A, you read entrepreneurs and you said, oh yeah, they did talk about entrepreneurs. And if you didn't read the full context of the fifth paragraph, answer A would have been a very easy trap. Again, this is one of the test writer's favorite traps. If you see an answer choice with buzzwords taken from the passage, you should at least be very nervous about that answer choice. Here's one more that follows the exact same idea. Virtually every student I've had who answers this question wrong either chooses choice A or choice E. And both of those choices have this distinct phrase, developed prefrontal cortex, or development of the prefrontal cortex. And that distinct phrase is taken directly from the second paragraph. So when you read answer choice A or E, it sounds very familiar. The correct answer in this case ends up being C. But most students are uncomfortable with C because of this word disobedient. And they argue that, well, disobedient was not in the passage. And while the passage does not say the word disobedient, it does talk about difficulty following the new rule and failures to follow new rules, which again is the very definition of being disobedient. There's a special class of obfuscated answer choices that are true but irrelevant, meaning they mention something that is in the passage, and it is a true statement, but it doesn't answer the question. Again, here's one question that a lot of students get wrong. The question asks about the Bella Coola Indian legend, and that's mentioned in the third paragraph of the passage. And that legend talks about how wolves and men are similar, and that when someone tried to change the animals into men, they succeeded in making human eyes from the wolf. So when you read answer choice D, the idea that wolves resemble humans in certain ways, that seems to match up exactly with the idea that wolves have human eyes. But you have to go back to the original question. The question is not asking, what is the Bella Coola Indian legend about? It's asking about the author's point, which means we actually have to go back 2 sentences before the author mentions the Bella Coola Indian story. The author says, the wolf exerts a powerful influence on the human imagination. And the Bella Coola Indian story was an example of how that imagination was influenced. And once again, we see the author of the question tries to mask that from us. The passage talks about imagination, where the correct answer, answer choice B, doesn't use the word imagination, but it does talk about provoking fanciful thinking. Provoking, that matches up exactly with influencing, and of course fanciful thinking matches up exactly with imagination. So again, we see the same old trick where the authors of the question tried to change the language slightly so that when we read answer choice B, we didn't recall the words provoke or fanciful thinking in the passage, so it didn't sound familiar. On top of that, they tried to get us to think about the story where the wolves resembled humans. And while that part was directly in the passage, it just didn't answer the question, or it wasn't the author's point. In other words, answer choice D was true, it was in the passage, but it was also irrelevant to answering the question.